broadcasting for Revolution Radio on revolution.radio. That's right. There are lots of ideas here. Some are strange and wonderful, and others are wonderful and strange. Yes, that's the story I'm going to stick with. Hey, but before we get to that, this is Listener Funded Radio, which means it needs your support. If you can't support this station, then it will die. Well, first it will wither, and then it will die. But it will die surely after it's withered, because it needs support. The electrons need to keep flowing through the copper cables, such as they are. And for that, we need money. Now, if you can't donate, that's okay, of course. I mean, hey, this is free, right? This is Listener. This is free radio. Radio Free Europe. Well, it's Radio Free Earth, really, in a way. Maybe you can tell people about this, the station, shows, etc. And maybe one of those people can donate. Okay? So donations are really, really critical. Any form of cash is good. Go to the website. There's a donate button there. There's Patreon. There's a whole bunch of stuff where you can leave your money. Crypto is good too. Whatever form of currency you prefer. It's all good. Okay. Very important though, right? There's no corporation behind us here. What? No fizzy drinks and no high fructose corn syrup. What? Yes, it's true. And Pepsi is not going to give you partial credits. Yeah. Hey, you know what else is good? The archives, they're free. They're completely free. Completely gratis. Which is great. Another good reason to donate if you want to. Now, before we start broadcasting at you in anger, we would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land from which we broadcast. And for Dave, that is the
Bundjalung,
and I'm sure Dave has got a few flood stories for us. For myself, of course, it's the good Dirac people here in. And today was quite sticky Pemulwuy. Humidity was right up there, 70-80% humidity, 30 degrees. So if it's 30 degrees Celsius, which is about, I don't know, what's that, 80, 90 Fahrenheit, it feels a lot hotter if it's sticky. However, we would like to acknowledge the traditional for which we broadcast, and we would like to acknowledge elders past, present, and future. Thank you very much. Now, sticky, my friend, was it?
Totally. Did you know that the dew point for condensating moisture was 28 degrees today?
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. It's what you find at the equator during the wet season.
So what I'm sorry, what are you saying?
Well, my wife and I had been talking about this for a while, and she came up with the concept that we now live in the wet season for summer.
Yeah, correct. You're correct. There has been a shift for a few years now, and she's completely correct. We have, because when I came to Australia 30 odd years ago, and obviously you grew up here, so you know better than anyone, we had distinct seasons. Now, it never really snowed in Sydney, but pretty cold though, right? Pretty cold. Then there was autumn and spring were quite nice. Autumn was probably a bit wetter, and winter was quite wet and quite cold. It would rain quite a bit in winter, but it was quite cold as well. But summer was hot. And I remember this because I came to Australia in summer. It was hot, even in February.
Hello.
And well, there were rains. Of course, there were, big. I remember almost like Singapore-like rains at one point in Sydney, but the humidity wasn't too bad. It was a dry heat. That was the main difference I found. See, when I grew up in Europe, it got hot. 30 degrees was considered hot when I grew up, right? And it wasn't a dry heat. It wasn't a sticky heat either. In Europe, the heat is quite mild. It's hot, but it's bearable. Okay, and the sun doesn't burn you to a crisp, even through cloud cover. Where it does here. And Singapore is the equator again is different, where it is sticky, but it rains, and the rain actually does cool it down, and it comes like clockwork, right? But now here in Sydney, I mean, we always had wet season up top, Northern Australia. That's normal.
That's right? Called the top end, yeah.
That's right. Whereas down south here, or further south, and Sydney is quite far down south, it was seasons. not really European seasons or North American seasons, but seasons nonetheless. And now, that's not really the case. You're right, Dave, and your wife is right. Bell has got it in one.
Yeah.
It is shifting to a, well, I guess you have to say tropical kind of rain season, right? Because it is hot. It is hot. It rains a lot, and Dave can tell us all about that. And it's in fact it's really bad flooding. I mean, look at Sydney. Oh, sorry, not Sydney so much, but a little further north. I look at the situation there, and I'm reminded of pictures from Bangladesh and India during the rainy season, where people are wading through hip-deep water in their village. That's where we are here now, I think, during summer, which is not really something that used to happen. And you can't. I don't think you can blame La Nina anymore, because we're apparently in an El Nino year, right? So, well,
Apparently.
Apparently, that's what they say. No, but yeah, tell us, my friend. I mean, how was it? How is it?
Oh, well, look, where I am at the moment in Bungslung country, we avoided the rain. Thank heavens. It was coming straight for us, but there was a last moment shift northwards because it was coming from the west, due east it was travelling, and it just turned and went north and then sat over the local Brisbane area. And you know how we talked about crazy numbers of rain? Well, they had 100 mils per hour for 3 hours straight. That eventuated in 300 mils. That's a foot of rain in 3 hours. And 100 mil of rain and no more rain in any length of time will cause some local flooding, just local, shallow stuff, and happy days. Any more than that, and we don't have infrastructure to cope with that kind of water, that kind of deluge. I have to make it biblical sounding, because the kind of water was there was a couple of meters deep. So there was one guy there, he had the watermark on it in his room, where he'd only just completed 6 months ago the restoration of the house after the 2022 floods. And then the news crew was in there filming where it's all perfect. The house looked new on the inside, because it was, and now it's all destroyed. And the only thing that he had was the shorts he went to bed in. Right, everything else was covered in mud, and the streets are littered now. All the water's gone, but all the streets are littered with all the appliances, everything electrical, all the the food, the washing machine, dryer, fridges, all dead. It's heartbreak, to see some poor dude's car just finished the restoration on it, and now it's been flooded with ick water. Because you don't just get rainwater, you get in houses where that gets flooded. It floods from the inside. It doesn't have to necessarily breach your perimeter, because the drains drain out, and then when they flood, it floods inwards inside the house up through your drains. And sewage is a huge problem, and that's also mixed in with that water that's flooding your house. So it's repulsive. And the cars that were all parked on the side of the street were tagged with being submerged, and we're just getting towed. That's it, done. They get towed to a holding yard, right? And the assurance assessor confirms the flood depth, and done. That's a payout, right? So, Meki, I'm going to say we survived that. I'm going to say, but Belinda also mentioned something to me today about when she woke up this morning. It was entirely pea soup. Pea soup being a fog so thick you can't actually see very far at all. 10, 20 meters was it. And I believe that was a sea fog.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, because I've been, You wake up late at night, get a drink of water, have a look outside, and from my house you can see some hills. The valleys connect to tidal areas, so we don't have direct, where I live at home normally, we don't have direct water views, but the sea fogs come in. You can see them roll in. It's quite nice, but never this time of year. Never. I've been here, 25 years, never done it, not once. And that's the kind of late autumn, early winter fog, which is the typical time to get the fogs. Not now. So, yeah, to look, if anything, the stability of the climate for the last million years or thereabouts, I think it's out the window. That stability of the climate allowed, hominids to do their thing, and farming. But now, with everything getting off, let's just call it off kilter. Yeah, we're journeying into a different area now of instability, where that stability can't be counted on anymore for what it was worth to us in the past. And I don't know about you, Mackie, but I would, whilst you dream of, if I had a farm, somewhere where it rained, not too much, not too little, it could be profitable. Those places are kind of disappearing. It's very hard to be a farmer. I could not imagine being a farmer these days.
They actually interviewed a few farmers, and I was listening to the radio. So I was driving around today, and driving around is maybe saying too much. I dropped my kids off at gymnastics, but and then I took the car in for some repairs. But it was heartbreaking, because the thing is, when the flooding was there before, it didn't really, just a little while ago there was bad flooding right up north, and it didn't affect them as much because they hadn't really brought the harvest in, or it wasn't ready to be harvested. No. But now they say, because it is pretty much loaded up, right? They're ready to go. They lost 100,000 heads of salad, for example, right? This one farmer. I don't know how much. That's tens of thousands of dollars, I imagine, lost, right? And other things as well. That's just one example, because it's just, well, if you can't harvest it and it sits there in the water, it'll just rot. That's just what happens.
Yeah, that's
it rots, and that's a complete loss. So, and he said this flood he feels is worse than the one before, even though the one before was more dramatic, I guess, from a water level point of view, but the impact of this one is worse for the farmers. So yeah, I think and this comes on
that'll
top
reach
of,
us, though. It'll reach us at some point.
Oh, completely, absolutely. In fact, there've been impact all around. The thing is that, in fact, one of the impacts already that we're seeing, there was an inquiry underway that the big supermarkets here in Australia seem to be price gouging. So they're paying minimal money to the farmers, for their produce, whatever it might be, and then they're making a massive profit on selling it in the supermarkets. It's citing cost of living.
The cost of living is
increase. A lot of nonsense.
Did you know, Mickey? Across the planet, even the US is saying exactly the same words as us.
Yes, because this. Okay, I'm sorry to go there again. The fundamental thing that is wrong with our world is this: we let it run. Okay, we should let it run and let it be free. And I'm talking about the economy. So no one should regulate it. It should just go and it'll regulate itself. Trickle down economics will take care of everybody, because if somebody makes money, then somebody else is going to make money too. Hurrah! Well, no, and
because the people that make the money just want to make more money.
And they want to help you, right?
They all want to help you.
Because they're really nice people, right? No.
Evident every day, Mackie. Evident every day.
So, and when you have a chance to gouge, or price fix, or establish a monopoly, or make more money than God, if you can, trust me, these are obscene profits now they're making, right? Like the banks. Then, ultimately, it's
But who's the loser, Mackie? Let's just say that. Who's the loser? It's us.
Well, we are.
Yeah.
Of course we are. Right? We are the loser because the system doesn't work. The system fundamentally has failed. Right? We haven't caught up with that yet. The system has failed, and this system is relatively new. It's not an old system of like the economic system that we have is not that old. Not really, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because economics was very different in the olden
days. When I was a kid,
after World War II.
Yeah.
We for the first time really.
Let's say apart from the India, what's that India something company?
The British East India Company.
Yeah. Except for them and a couple of others, globalism wasn't really a thing.
Neither was the British East India Company. So globalism was not on the charter of the British East India Trading Company. What it was to further the aims of empire and make every shareholder of that company rich. That was its goal.
Okay.
And you have to understand, this is the key thing as well. The main difference between because empires were always quite far-reaching. They would trade around. Trade could exist. That's not
like Rome did the same thing.
Yeah. Look. Everybody, the Persians, the Babylonians, or even the empires across Africa, the empires across South America, Asia, etc. They all had trade, right? They all traded. They all made money. So that wasn't really new. In fact, the Silk Road is probably the oldest, not the oldest, but probably the best example of cross-continental trade.
Yes.
Interestingly enough, if the tea was traded on land, so it came by caravan, it is called some form of chai. Chai.
Oh, yes.
If it came by sea, it is some form of the word of tea, etc., which I find really fascinating. So all the countries that used to get their tea via land, calling it some version of chai, and every country that used to get their tea via the oceans is calling it some version of tea. But that's just a little piece of useless information there for you.
That's very interesting.
But the interesting thing, okay? The interesting thing is this. In those days of global trade, which existed, they found cocaine in the mummies, and tobacco in the mummy in the tissue of the mummies.
Yep.
There ain't no cocaine trees. There are no coca trees in Egypt.
No, that's right.
But look, so no, what has changed is each country made something. That's why there was trade, right? They didn't trade because there was a country that made something cheaper than another country. If you wanted tea, you had to trade with India and China. If you wanted certain kinds of spices, you had to trade with India and China, right? If you wanted really good apples, you had to trade with Europe and so forth.
Avocados, exactly.
Yeah. So each country, first of all, was self-sufficient for its basic needs.
That's correct.
Right? And then all the other stuff came in from other places, but there was just no way to grow tea in Europe. You couldn't do it. Couldn't grow coffee in Europe either, right? And in other areas, you couldn't grow other things. It's just the way the cookie crumbled. It was just how it was. And then slowly that changed, and people grew more and more things here and there, like the potato, the chili, etc., tomatoes. They all spread around because they're quite useful, right? But still, countries were unique in what they produced, and right up until World War II. Right up until World War II, if you traveled the world, you would really travel the world, right? If you went to, even let's say you started like Phileas Fogg. Phileas Fogg says, "I can around the world in 80 days." Beautiful, let's go. And he goes from London. He goes into he goes over to Europe, takes the Orient Express to Istanbul, etc., and then goes into Egypt. Takes a ship across, and then it takes a dhow even or steamer. I think it took a steamer ship into India, but even when he crossed the Channel into Europe, it was a different place. So England was England, and then he went to France, and France was not France. It wasn't homogeneous. It was France. Or so you traveled to a country, and that country had an identity, right? And there are certain things that you could only find in that country that you couldn't find anywhere else. There were no shopping malls and global companies that had their finger in every country, selling their products in every country.
You didn't find McDonald's everywhere.
No, that's right. I mean, even the idea of a global chain was completely unthinkable at the
That's
time,
right.
right?
That's right.
That was prior to World War II. Come World War II, and the aftermath, and the economic miracles of Germany and Japan, and the reconstruction of the rest of the world, as well as the rise of the United States of America as a global superpower in competition with the USSR, saw a change. All of a sudden, people started thinking in global terms. Yeah, the Americans had now established themselves in countries other than their own, right? Permanently. In Europe, they had bases. They had bases now.
Through the Pacific Islands.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Russians did something similar. They were more continental colonialists. They had countries surrounding them. So the Russians, with the exception of maybe Cuba and Vietnam and a few others, they didn't really colonize them. They influenced them. But the Eastern European countries, they were really under Russia's thumb. I mean, you couldn't have a revolution there. They were all quite brutally suppressed. Same with China. China had its satellite states, not as much. And America, of course, had Western Europe and then Australia and a few other bits and pieces here and there. But it was now global. It was a global kind of environment. And what the Marshall Plan did, it created markets for American goods outside of America, in Japan, as well as in Germany. Now, by extension, those goods would permeate Europe and then Asia, and eventually also, Africa and South America anyway. But certainly there was this, all of a sudden the American corporations said, "Oh my God, look at all these people! They got money. They can buy our stuff." And so we did. In the West, not so much in the East. In the East, they smuggled it in and they sold it for 3 times the price. Like especially jeans. And they all came through Turkey, funnily enough. Blue jeans, Levi jeans, they were smuggled from Istanbul via Odessa mostly, which is obviously, as you know, in the Ukraine, into the rest of Russia and the rest of the Soviet bloc. Quite funny. But the point here is this. This whole globalization didn't start with any earlier than that, and then all of a sudden, people started realizing, oh, I want to make more money. I want to be richer and richer and richer, because people had reasonable income, I think, or an income that was commensurate with their effort in the company. So a CEO wouldn't get 1,000 times what a regular worker would get. Yeah. It just wouldn't. It just didn't. Wasn't the thing. Now there were always super rich parasites, don't get me wrong, right? But it wasn't the norm. But then something changed, and in the 70s, I guess more so in the 80s, profit became the only thing, not the most important thing. It became the only thing that mattered. Mm-hmm. The stock market, which produces nothing, was making a killing. It was now common for companies to be taken over and broken up and sold for profit, even if they were quite viable. So if the stock market could be manipulated, for their share price could be made to go down significantly, there could be a hostile takeover. They fire all the management, even the owner. If you're the owner, too bad for you. You're out. And then they take your company and they sell it off bit by bit. And they make a massive profit that way. And throughout the 80s, that happened a lot.
Yeah.
And then monopolies would start to be formed. And you saw the advent of global brands. And the Americans were the first ones to establish global brands, right? Coca-Cola.
And Nike.
Yeah. They were massive. And then they decided to not produce their stuff in America anymore. Mm-hmm. If I make it in America, it's too expensive. Then Europeans can't afford it, the Asians can't afford it, and I don't make enough money. Your transport costs as well, etc., etc. I mean, this is all costing me money. So how do I negotiate my extra costs? I know I'll find countries that have labor costs that are super duper dirt cheap.
That's right.
And they did. That's what happened. It still does. And all of a sudden, because we now are part of a global homogeneous culture, no matter where you go, it's pretty much the same. Doesn't really matter where you go. And I've traveled far and wide. I've been around the block a couple of times. And if you go across Asia, into India even, you go across Europe, right? You go across, of course, North America, and then even the Pacific here, you got Pacific Island. You got a shopping mall. It's like,
That's right.
the only thing that might be different are the goods that are being sold. I went to New Caledonia some years ago, a couple of years ago for work, and I went to the supermarket there, and they were selling predominantly French supermarket items. Being a French colony, that makes sense. But the point is this: we have homogenized the planet. We have the entire planet now is the corporations, all of the corporations' playground. They go to wherever they want for labor and production. They go to wherever they want for resources and raw materials. They go to wherever they want for tax purposes. Give you a simple example.
Boy, don't they? Yes.
What they do, a major mining company in Australia had its marketing and corporate offices in Singapore. It's an Australian company, but the marketing and corporate headquarters is in Singapore. Why? Because tax is better. Corporate taxes is a lot better there. Okay, these companies are no longer bound to the nation state that birthed them. They're just not. They are now completely unbeholden to anyone. In fact, countries are beholden to them. They're vying for their entry, if you will. Build your factory here. We will give you conditions that you can't say no to. Hurrah! It's shocking, but that's our economy. But it's not a model that has been around for very long, right? And because it hasn't been around for very long, you couldn't really test drive it, Dave.
No, that's right.
So
it's
now
way too late for that now.
What happens if you take your old beaten up car that you've never driven past 60 clicks an hour up to Bathurst, and then you really rev it up? What's going to happen to your car?
It's going to kill it.
You're going to kill it, aren't you?
Yeah.
Hey.
I like the analogy. That was good.
But it's true. That's what happens. And now, and another thing that happened, which is very interesting, because these corporations were making massive profits for a long time. And to the point where, and this is where I want you to read Confessions of an Economic Hitman, everybody, because now the nation states were doing their bidding. The organizations like the CIA, not just the CIA, but others, were going in, changing governments to be more favorable to the corporations that wanted to do business there. The term banana republic literally comes from an earlier incarnation of that kind of thinking. So America had always been very protective of America. So the U.S. wanted to control both North and South America, and they did that before. This was before World War II. They did that by setting up their own, politicians in these South American countries, and it was the banana companies that did it first. Because bananas, it's good business. We laugh these days about it, but it's true. It still is a huge business. But it didn't really get started in anger until the 60s and 70s. That's when it really gained momentum, when they could see just how much money they could make. And then all of a sudden, we had air travel, which changed things even more.
It shrank the world so much, yeah.
So much. Satellite communication. Prior to the 1950s, we had no satellite communication. Why?
Do you remember the 3-second delay or more calling internationally?
Oh, completely. There's a...
That's right.
If you don't know what I was doing, then you're too young. But all of these things, because before the 1950s, we had no satellites, right? But all of a sudden, communications were instantaneous. All of a sudden, travel had shrunk from weeks or months, even on a steamer, on an ocean liner, right, to hours, days at most. Where you catch connecting flights. You could you could fly around the world in a matter of a couple of days. And of course now it's even faster. And the world changed. People had tourism. There was extra money. Americans became massive tourists. Japanese became massive tourists. Germans became massive tourists. All the countries that had spare cash. Now, obviously, somebody had to foot the tab there, right? And it was, as usual, it was the South Americans, the Africans, and a lot of big chunks of Asia that footed the bill for those excesses, because it was on their back that this wealth and well-being was achieved. Okay. Now, I don't want to take away from the economic miracles, but let's just call a spade, because we are standing on the shoulders of the oppressed here, living our lifestyles, okay? Using their resources and raw materials and labor. Let's not forget that. And not only that, we use their countries to fight our proxy wars. We don't want to fight a war in Europe. We don't want to fight a war in America. We don't want to fight a war, in anywhere that's civilized. That was the thinking. We just fight those wars in Vietnam, in Angola, right? In Nicaragua. Let's fight those wars somewhere else between the Soviet Union and the United States. Afghanistan is a good place, Dave. Let's fight a war there. And that's what happened.
I think it's happening. I think it's all happening. It's all happening.
So our economic model, or the way we have been living, has been around for, generously speaking, 60 years. That's a couple generations of people, right? Now, it was really good for the first couple of generations. It was awesome. I mean, we have never seen such wealth creation in the West. But for everybody, I mean, right? Everybody was doing okay. Manufacturing was doing well everywhere in America and Europe, right? People had jobs. There was a future. The GI Bill that Eisenhower signed into not just Eisenhower, but I think other presidents as well, that guaranteed returning soldiers, either a job or a place at uni, etc. Those were fantastic things. Out of World War II, the British got universal health care. Do you know that?
Yeah, that's right.
It's look, a lot of things that were really, really good for the West happened in the 1950s and 60s. Right?
In the 70s, Mackie, in 1973, there was a thing called the Lima Agreement.
Okay.
That the Western countries signed to, and it's, US, Australia, England, we signed that agreement so that what we would do is sacrifice our local manufacturing and give it to countries that weren't so well off, and so we could lift them up, help lift them up. So it's called the Lima Agreement. You can find it online. It's there. It's a real thing. And at that exact moment, when we started to abandon our local manufacturing, it did take quite some time, nearly 40 years, for it to have the devastating effect that it's had on us. But without that agreement, what if we'd not signed it in a fictitious scenario, if we didn't all sign on to it, then we would have held tight to our manufacturing, kept our what are those levies and fees and import duties on similar products. We would have raised the cost of imports and therefore secured and kept safe our local manufacturing. It wasn't to be, though.
That's
and
right.
So one of those, that to me is not the center, but it's one of the vectors that got people thinking, let's just, if it's okay to have a country overseas that's manufacturing for us, why don't we make a shelf company and go and stick our own manufacturing plant over there? We can save heaps.
Yeah.
Right?
Essentially.
Yeah.
And if the locals don't like us polluting the water supply, right? If the politicians stand up to us, we're just going to find some more amenable politicians, people that understand the right way of
thinking. And the
thinking.
influence on other countries.
Right.
As a result, yeah, because didn't Union Carbide have a whole bunch of problems all around the world?
They all did, my friend, but yes.
Oh, well, that's one that stood out, because there used to be a Union Carbide plant in Balmain. And it closed because, environmentalists, right, started to push them out.
When
we all discovered just how much pollutants they were putting into Sydney's harbour, that was an extraordinary turn of events there. And, the roads, Becky, you know where Rhodes is? Rhodes?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. Well, that became the centre of a whole bunch of contaminated soil problems. And those companies that were there moved out and they tried to sell it. and there was a lot of I believe there was news stories on this about a politician buying it on the cheap and then trying to sell it. They put a foot of soil over the top, and then end up selling it for a complete fortune.
Everybody knows a foot of soil cures all ills.
Everything. And of course, then we had the Homebush Stadium, where that used to be a quarry, and all of the contaminants from all the manufacturing plants around Sydney were being dumped into there. And then that
Well,
became...
you hate Blinky now. You're hating on Blinky.
Yeah, Blinky, that's right.
Stop hating on Blinky.
So
I don't know why I put that on.
Well, the accent was just... That had me. I was there with you. So each one of those things seemed to be a contributing factor towards it, plus the money thing, the shift in the psychological profile of a company, changing from everything about the company is important to money only. And back to you in the studio.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought there was more. Well, look, that's exactly as things happen and are still happening, and we're still caught in this idea today.
Mm-hmm.
That we'll just continue this way because it worked so well for a couple of generations. It did. It really did. It worked really, really well. We're trying to recapture some of that glory with carbon credit trading, right? That's a complete. The cynicism of carbon credit trading is so monumental that I have no good analogies at all. None. I have none. I'm sorry. I'm fresh out of analogies there. It is. Yeah. Look. It's like.
There were two political parties, Mickey, and one came up with carbon credits. Well, decided to stand at an election because of carbon credits, and they were beaten down. You can't do that. What a stupid idea that is. Carbon credits. What is this climate thing anyway? And they lost to that party who said, what climate problem? And those carbon credits it's gonna cost. It's like that Simpsons scene where, one guy just rubs his fingers together like it's going to cost you money, and they go boo, right? And that's all it was. So they lost, and now the whole planet is talking carbon credits, and everyone's going, geez, we could have got in early. What a disappointment that was. We missed the boat there.
That's right.
That's right.
A couple of moments to think there. I've got an analogy. If you were to sell the bullet casings from a school shooting the next day as souvenirs, together with a T-shirt, I went to a school shooting and all I get was this lousy T-shirt and bullet casings. Yeah. Well, that's the level of cynicism that carbon trading is. Okay?
You boy.
Right there.
Yeah.
I mean, no, I'm not being. I'm completely serious. This is a whole new level of unbelievable. But we are caught here, and the issue is this, right? People that are in charge of the economy, God help us all, think that it just works. Even though the head of the Federal Reserve in the United States said that during this whole crisis when everything went south and sideways, that it didn't rectify itself. He said, Greenspan, remember Alan Greenspan?
Yeah.
He said, I guess I've been wrong.
I've been wrong, that's right.
He said that.
Yeah.
But no one seems to have listened to him when he said it. That's the kicker. Because we're still doing the same thing. Nothing has changed. And there's and this will collapse. It cannot go on. It will collapse. Because you can't keep shifting labor around. You can't.
But they do.
Up to a point. You can even eliminate labor. Okay, but all of a sudden you've got to see. We now have a lot more people than we ever did before in recorded history, and all these people need to work. Except, of course, they won't because their jobs won't exist. Things are going to shut down. They're going to be made redundant because AI, because economic pressure, because we're moving our manufacturing base, because we no longer have a manufacturing base, or whatever the case may be. And these people will be out of work. And our resources are not unlimited. I know it feels like that. I know it does.
It is until it's all gone.
Until it's all gone. And And then we go, oh, geez, well, party was nice while it lasted. um, and we are okay. We're talking about renewables and this and that and the other. And that's all wonderful. That's great. Not enough is being done. You know, the one country. This is really funny. You know, the one country that is achieving its targets on renewables more than any other country. It's China.
Wow.
It's China. China has put. Oh, yeah, it's astounding. In fact, China has managed to reduce the cost of solar cells by a factor of 10. Because they've been focusing on making more and better solar cells, right? So they're now much cheaper and much better. So the conversion ratio of solar to any kind of other energy is much better. But it's still not the answer, because the rest of the world and most of China as well are still thinking along the lines as though we have unlimited resources and we can do whatever we want, and we can keep doing the kind of economic game plan that we have been doing for the past 60 years. That's no longer possible, though. And we are
people,
coming
with more people making this potential for unlimited profits.
Yeah, that's right. They're all gonna buy my crap. Hurrah!
Trigger. That's a trigger word.
That's a trigger word. It's all right. But it is certainly interesting now to see what happens, because what happens is nobody talks about that anymore. Have you noticed this? I mean, yes, there's inflation and cost of living pressure, but no one is talking about the economic collapse that is inevitable. It's inevitable. It's not like I don't want it to happen. Trust me, I don't. This is the worst thing that could happen. I don't want it to happen. I don't. But there's nothing I can do about it. It will happen. It will happen very, very soon too. Because the system, right? It's a house of cards, and just how much of a house of cards it is, we saw in recent history. We saw it twice, right? We saw it when the housing market collapsed, and with it, the banking system in America and then globally as well.
That's because they were scoundrels cheating each other out of money, but that's all right.
Yeah. And the second time we saw it, and this might surprise you, but it's all a confidence thing. Right? You have to make people believe certain things. We saw it when the Russians invaded Ukraine, because everybody thought, oh, this is going to be over in a couple of days.
Including the Russians thought that. Yep.
So all of these notions that we held in our heads of whatever it might be, Russia's a strong country, militarily, blah blah blah, can't even finish conquering Ukraine. It's the second year now, and
so there's those widely held beliefs that we all had about how strong Russia was, that fell apart.
Fell apart.
Like what happened? How could they not even take their neighboring country easily? Nothing made sense.
No, it didn't.
And that's
now,
when you start questioning yourself. Why was I afraid of them the whole time? Right.
That's right. But you can see now, it's starting to become a free fall. Why am I saying this? Look at the situation as it's unfolding in the Middle East.
Oh, it's going to
right.
Pot. Yep.
So everybody, of course, Iran is being blamed for everything. If you listen to all the newscasts, it doesn't matter what happens there. It's always an Iranian-backed group. No further proof needed. It's just we say it is.
Who was it? The ex-military general said, just destroy them all. Talking about Iran. Yeah,
and the Israelis said the same thing about Gaza.
Yeah, we'll turn it to glass.
No Gaza. They said there is no two-state solution, which means there will never be a Palestinian state as far as the leaders of Israel are concerned. It's not going to happen.
Yep, that's
not going to happen.
Yep.
So this is, but it's not the only place where things are turning into a free for all. It's really interesting to see the developments in Europe, the rise of the left and the right globally. I mean, we're seeing voter turnouts for the far right and the far left that we haven't seen since the 1920s.
Yeah.
Okay. We just haven't. It just hasn't.
Do you know, that kind of scares me now?
Sure.
And I have to say that if I would believe anything, it would be the power of social media in a way that the media itself could never achieve. Not print media, not radio, not television. Could never attach an emotional connection to something so well as that thing that we trust, we hold in our hand, and it's our cell phone with all of the whole internet in there, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
That I think has built this left versus right, even in countries that didn't have such a left versus right in the first place. We're hearing messages now from left and right, even though the left and right in your country may not match the left and right in, say, America, for instance. But I'm seeing this more and more, and I'm seeing that emotional connection that people have to an idea, which is unwavering now that they've got that connection. And they're all triggerable, like they've been involved in some secret project in Montauk and are a sleeper. That's how strong their connection is.
But that's what I think now we're approaching 2 decades of smart devices will do to you. We have generation. We now have a generation. I argue 2 generations because they were fairly young when it was introduced. That were never not connected. Okay,
that's right.
They've lived their lives on the line. You mean online, right? No, on the line.
On the line.
And I'm sorry, it's my private joke. It's terrifying because that's where the information comes from. For those generations, not everybody, but a lot. And it's bits and pieces. It's a 20. What's a tweet? 10 seconds or 100 characters, whatever it is. I don't know. And TikTok is 10 seconds, right?
Yeah, 15 or so, whatever it is. Yeah.
It's not long, right? It's not a dissertation. It's not someone explaining to you really how things are. So the key thing that I try to teach my kids and anybody who wants to listen, really, which is all of you, is to understand something. Right before you form an opinion, understand it. So people will say stuff. I don't know. Yemen, the Houthis are bad. They're terrorists. Okay, well, understand the situation. What happened? Hamas is bad. They're terrorists and they committed horrific crimes. Well, no argument. But why? What is the situation, right? You can't just put this out there and then that's the truth. Okay, because there's always something that went before, and you really have to understand all of it before you can even.
And some of those conflicts are generational.
Oh, completely.
And institutionalized hatred towards another party, like for that.
Absolutely.
So Mickey, I'm just to pause one more moment there. When you raise that question with the person who's, let's say flamboyantly expressing their opinion, you say, well, why do you think that? And what's their immediate reaction to you?
It's look at a number, but the most common one is it's obvious or it's commonly known. Don't you know this? Everybody knows this.
There's a separation between you and that person now, where they believe you're not on their side.
No. What they believe is that you're misinformed. That's the thing.
There you go.
That you're not on their side. That's not really your fault. If you were better informed, then you would be on their side. Right?
That's true.
So, which is of course a fallacy because information is really good information. It's really hard to come by. Unbiased information.
Yeah, that's almost impossible these days.
Yeah, it's tough. It really is tough. It really helps to understand history, or at least as much of it as we can. Mm-hmm. Human nature you should understand. You should understand the basic rudimentary workings of psychology, right? Because ultimately, we are who we are. But it's really important to understand who we are and why we do certain things and what triggers us, right? I mean, fear is the mind killer. If you get people afraid enough, their higher brain functions will shut down. And if you get them into a state of uncertainty, that's even better. You don't even have to shut the higher brain functions down. because they become completely consumed with procrastination.
And
what do I do?
self-doubt.
I don't know.
That's right.
Yeah. What do I do? I don't know. Is this the right? I don't know. How about I do this? I don't know. This could be worse, but this could be worse, but something else could be worse, right? It's beautiful. It really is beautiful. And I wish I had thought
written
of it.
in 1980. Sorry, in the book 1984. Well written in that they should shape the people by fear, by constant fear, by that uncertainty, the perpetual war. And if you haven't watched the news for the last 30 years, you'll have missed it. But there's kind of been always a conflict going on somewhere.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And now your country is in one. If you don't know, there's a full carrier strike group, and CSG, they're launching missions against Yemen. And I'm just going to... The Yemenis, whoever it is that doesn't like people going past them in boats anymore for some reason, it goes, oh, we can destroy the whole of America. Yeah, good luck with that. Good luck with that. So
Yeah.
if you shoot even like a 22 at the hull of one of those ships, good luck. I'm going to say it's not going to be good for you. But there was 3 servicemen, Meki, US servicemen, killed with a drone strike the other day, and that's the it was blamed on Iran, and this is going full circle to what we talked about at the beginning. But that the general goes, just bomb them all. So in the group, if you were at his board table in like a meeting, trying to work out, this is the war room, what are we going to do? And he goes, just kill them all. Now, I told you before, shush it. Right? So who wants coffee? Did I say bomb them all? No, I told you to shush it, right? If his only response to every question is, let's just bomb them all, they are, well, thank you for your input. But I think that's what's kind of going on. And I'm still under the same impression that we are all getting angst into a war, and there's no de-escalation occurring anywhere. Yeah, you might say, oh, people are trying to negotiate in this and that. That's not really de-escalating anything. That's really concreting people into where their decisions have been already made. They don't want to back down. So, back to you in the studio, Mackie.
Look, so what's the answer then, right? That's the question here. What's the answer? Well, of course, the answer is that you keep listening to Platos Cave, to understand the background, to understand what's going on, to understand what's the puppet show, what's the reality, right? But also, I mean, look, maybe you're happy to not know. That's okay too. Look, we all have to live our lives. And I understand people that don't want to know. I get it. I really do. I truly understand it. I personally find it difficult not to talk about it, right? Because it just burns a hole in my head if I don't. At least talk about it. Right? But ultimately, you all have to prepare yourself for what's coming. Okay? It's unfortunate that it has come to this point. It is unfortunate that we have been completely absent in being good stewards of our civilization. We have, in fact, nobody really thinks like that anymore. Nobody thinks about stewardship and responsibility for humanity or even the planet as a whole. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we've shrunk that ideal has shrunk to a person.
Yeah, we worship all the wrong things, and certainly don't understand where it is going to get us, because we're too distracted, and that's what Plato's Cave is all about, the distraction, right? You want the distraction, get distracted. So this is the reality. Don't worry about that. Don't look behind the curtain. There's no one behind the curtain. And that's how most people live. Now, look, I get it, right? I can't have conversations like this that Dave and I have here with you guys. I mean, you're not talking back, I know. But in the chat, you can, of course, voice your opinion.
Totally.
But out in the world, very few people want to talk about this, hear about this, they get upset. They get upset if you start talking about it, because then they look at you, you know, well, that's nonsense. That's not true. How do you know that? Oh, what, you know, that can't be true. I mean, I have this conversation. I mean, just simple things. Even my family doubts what I'm saying. I said, no, this is a fact. Here, this is what happened. No, I can't believe that. Look, hey, thank you so much for inviting us into your home. I can't believe it's been an hour already, even for this brief hour. It has been fun for us. I hope it was fun for you. Like I said, Plato's Caves. Don't go away. Something is going to come up, which is going to be awesome, of course. But most of all, second most of all, we see you on today's Tuesday, Thursday, and again on Sunday. But these days.